What's up, everybody? Winter has fully pretty much set in, and not doing much fishing. I hate the cold. I'm not a winter person, so it's building season. And I know I've shared pictures and short little videos of builds and stuff, but I figured let's log a whole build. So that's what we're going to be working on now. I got everything. I haven't even started yet, so we're going to go step by step. I'm going to try to share as many tips for you guys out there that might be interested in building your own rod. This one is going to be a spinning rod, like a finesse bass rod. But remember, no matter what you're building, the principles and the components are pretty much the same, whether you're building spinning, casting, fly, anything. It's pretty much all the same. The only difference is with spinning versus casting is you're building, reel up with the guides or down, and the reel seat is a little bit different. And then with fly, the only difference is the reel seat normally goes on the bottom unless it's a two-hand rod. And then just a grip on top with nothing behind it unless you add a little butt. Some of the two-hand rods do have even a rear grip. And then other than that, the difference between the just different style grips and a little bit different reel seat, fly rod would be built just like a multi-piece spin rod, just a little bit different guides, but the guides still go on the bottom. So no matter what you're building, you should get some use out of this video, and it'll be fun. I'll try to share as many tips and stuff I've learned from the years of doing this. And you can go below, right in the description there, I will timestamp the different steps. So if you're just strictly looking how to mount a reel seat or do a guide wrap or something, I'll timestamp everything. And I hope you enjoy the video. If you liked it, give the video a like down there, and if you would subscribe, helps me out a lot. All right, let's get started. Let's do this. So here, excuse my mess, but I'm going to go over everything you need to get started building. Supplies, components, everything. You really don't need that much. A lot of people say, oh, it's going to be too expensive and blah, blah, blah. So we'll go over that. There's really not that much. First thing to start with is something to actually wrap the rod with. This is the CRB hand wrapper. They're not that expensive. Even building commercially, I still love to use this thing. It's what I use. My first few rods I built for myself were built out of a cardboard box that I cut. You cut the things in to the side of a cardboard box, cut the front out, and then I just used a fly tying bobbin for my thread tension. So that's another super budget way you can wrap a rod. The box setup costs probably $5 to $8 to make, and that's even if you have to buy the box. So that's one way to do it. These hand wrappers are pretty cheap and they work real well. Then the actual stuff you'll need to build a rod. You're going to need a 2-part paste type epoxy. I like using this Pro Paste from the Pro products. It is super strong. I even know a guy that was using it to assemble end links on a race car, full size. So that stuff is super strong. Then you're going to need the actual finish. I should explain. The paste is used for mounting your grips and reel seats, any little winding checks, anything like that. That's what the paste is used for. This stuff is actual rod finish, and this is what goes over your thread and any stickers or labels or anything like that that you use. And that's a 2-part. Masking tape. Masking tape is what you're going to be building arbors with for mostly reel seats, some grips. We'll be doing that later. It also can be used to hold on the guides while you're starting your wraps and stuff like that. So get some masking tape. Mixing cups. Use these for your finish. I have aluminum foil here. I just make little trays for mixing this on. And then after I've mixed the actual rod finish, I pour it out on an aluminum tray too. Here's your mixing sticks. That's for mixing both the paste and the rod finish. Don't use the same one for both. This is tip-top glue. It is like a heavier duty hot glue, like you'd use in a hot glue gun. This is used for sticking on your very tip-top. Thread. You're going to need some type of thread to hold the guides on. razor blade for cutting thread and cutting everything else, brushes for applying your finish, and really that's about it. Oh, and a file. Forgot the file. File for filing, reaming your grips to fit your blank, and also for filing down the guide feet, which I'll be showing you that later. The guide feet, there's better things to use than a rat tail file, but if we're going just minimum, you can use the same file. And yeah, that should be about it, except if you want, one thing that makes the life, this is the first big expense you should buy, is a dryer. My first few rods, I didn't have a dryer. I spun them by hand for 4 to 6 hours. It can be done. You don't need it. But this is the #1 like luxury item you should get, is a dryer. And I recommend this is the variable speed one. Get a variable speed dryer if you're going to get a dryer at all. It is better to apply epoxy at a fast rate because that will give you much cleaner edges, and then dry it at a slow rate. That will give you better level epoxy. So those are your supplies, your bare minimums there. Now let's talk about components to actually build the rod. You're going to need the blank itself. This is the actual rod, if you will, but before it is assembled, it is referred to as a blank. This one that we're going to be building today is a American Tackle Bushido spin jig. I think, what is it rated at? 6 to 12? 8 to 12? Something like that. It's their medium light, fast action spin jig. So you need the blank. You'll need a reel seat. This is what mounts the reel to your rod. So if you have a fly, it'll look different. Cast will look different. This is a spinning rod, and I am going with the American Tackle Arrow. Super comfortable the way it sits in your hand like that. It's about the most comfortable spinning reel seat I've ever picked up. So you got your reel seat, your blank. You're going to need your selection of guides. This is going to differ depending on length, weight, what you're building, fly, casting, spinning. The ones I'm going to be using for this build are American Tackle microwave guides. If you haven't seen how cool these things are, guys, and these things perform like nothing else, man. Phone doesn't want to focus. There we go. I highly recommend these. And they make them from casting, and just this year they introduced fly ones now too. So if you're looking for the best, these are the best. They seriously do make a drastic improvement in your casting and accuracy. Unbelievable. And see, you don't even have to wait till the lure hits the water to feel the difference. The first time you cast one of these things, you can feel and even hear the difference as your line is sailing out. So your guides, and then the only other thing you really need is grips. Grips will vary depending on what you want. There's EVA grips, there's cork. You can even use stuff like carbon fiber tubes. There's carbon fiber wrapped grips like this available now, so just decide on what you want with your build. Remember, a lot of grips may require a butt cap. A couple different style butt caps here. And you know, some are one piece, some are split, some require a foregrip. This one will, above the reel seat. If you have a fly, you're probably going to have just the reel seat and one grip above the reel seat. Other rods, conventional rods, can require up to 3 grips if you're doing a split grip rear, if it needs a foregrip. If you don't want to use a foregrip, you just need the 2. If you're using a one piece, just a one piece. And that is it. So, time to get started. I'll be showing you the first steps to putting together your new favorite fishing rod. First step I like to do before you get started with anything, wash your hands, and then we're going to clean the blank. Facebook groups, forums, stuff like that. A lot of the major problems I see with newbies asking stuff is problems with either applying the epoxies, the finishes, color preserver, if it's needed, stuff like that. So you want to make sure everything is clean. No lotion, no suntan lotion, no oils on your hands. Same goes with the rod blank. Just because it just came from the sleeve doesn't mean there couldn't be anything on it. There can be manufacturing oils. The guy packing it could have had lotion on, anything like that. So once you wash your hands, I'm not going to do a video on washing your hands. I hope you know how. Once you do that, just a little bit of isopropyl rubbing alcohol, paper towel, soak it down, wipe down your whole blank from top to bottom. Let it dry. If you stop and eat or anything like that, remember you got to wash your hands again. Make sure your hands are clean whenever you are doing anything on your rod. Once you get it all clean, the first step is finding the spine of the rod. The spine, really important. It is the way the rod wants to naturally bend and arc. So it's important for both casting and fighting fish. And that's going to be one of the major things in separating the performance of your custom built rod versus a factory rod. 99.99999% of your factory rods, they're not taking the time to do this. So you'll get erratic performance even across the line, all that kind of stuff like that. Why they don't do it, I don't know. That's just your profit margins. It probably costs someone. They all decided down the line at some point it costs too much money to spend 3 minutes to mark it out. So to find your spine, I'm going to grab it up here, 2 hands. I'm going to put a bend in it on a hard floor or your table. I like to use the floor. And then you're just going to spin it, and you will literally feel the rod lock into a position. So you spin, just roll it right there. It's just locked. It will pop. Pops right there. And it will not want to roll out of that position. You have just found your spine. I'll go sideways like this. That's your spine. And right there, that's the way the rod wants to bend. So as you're bending it right here, you got that, you're bending the top away from you. Remember, that's the way the rod wants to bend. The spine will actually be on the bottom. It's just like our spine. You want to go forward. So if you're building a fly or a spin rod, you need to put your guides directly what would be the top of it in this position. If you're building a casting rod, you're going to want the guides directly on the bottom. So once you find the spine, hold it there, right down to the bottom. Use a China marker or a Sharpie. I like using Sharpies. I don't use the China markers. And put a line directly on the top. Some people use a tape flag. I just like using a marker. But that's your spine. And everything you do from here on out will be in alignment with that spine. So it's very important to have your marks. And that's how you find a spine. Once you got that, it's time to start mounting stuff. Okay guys, so here you can see I've marked out my spine. Well, the spine, this is spin rod, so the spine itself is actually on the direct opposite of that. But I like to mark it out where you're going to be mounting everything. Your guides, your reel seat, or the reel seat has to place the reel in the same direction the guides go. That's standard with any, no matter what rod you're building there. Unless you're doing a spiral wrap, but still the first rod, the spine will still face the reel. Yeah. So once you got all that marked out, the next step in building the rod is going to be the reel seat and grips. So when you're doing your reel seat, remember this is a custom rod. There really is no standard. There kind of is, but it goes to your grip here. Let me try to get this, but setting your grip length. If you've purchased a one-piece grip, you can still trim it down or purchase a longer one. They come in a bunch of different lengths. Your standard length to your reel seat, to the butt, should be somewhere down in the meat of your forearm here. See, right there is the crook of my elbow. So anywhere from about there to, you don't want to get too far out into the skinny in general, unless you want to. You can. It's a custom rod. So anywhere from about there to there. Couple things to keep in mind to help you fine tune this besides just comfort. If you fish standing up, if it's a heavier rod, stuff like that, you're probably going to want something on the longer one. The longer it is, the more you can brace it into your arm and even into your belly if you're fighting big fish. If you use deep, if it's like a bait soaking rod and you use deep rod holders, it might be better for you to make a little bit longer. I personally fish from a kayak and float tube a lot, and being this is just a medium light spin rod, not a big thing, so I like a little bit shorter rods. If you fish sitting down like you're in a float tube, actually sit down with your rod. If you're in a float tube or kayak, or if you have like an actual full back chair in your bass boat or anything like that and you fish sitting down, a lot of times it is better to have a shorter rod because you can bring it up and wheel it around and whatnot and not have that extra length. When you're sitting down, your legs and stomach can kind of get in the way of a longer rod. So, I mean, it's completely up to you. It's situational, it's comfort. A few things to keep in mind, like the sitting down. I always like, if you fish in a certain position, hold this rod in that position you're going to fish with. And move your hands up and down. Find about where you think it is most comfortable for you. And then one thing to remember, if you've got a butt cap or that rear grip, it's going to add anywhere from probably around a quarter to some of the thick ones might even get to a ½ inch. But allow just a little bit, anywhere from a quarter to a ½ inch more than your rod blank's going to extend, because you'll have that butt that will extend it a little bit. So allow for that. Okay, so once you know about where you want it, I always suggest mounting your reel to the actual reel seat. Just kind of slide it on there, hold it in about that position you thought, and then do everything again. Put it into your forearm, get in your fishing position, twirl the rod around, make sure you're happy with where everything is, because the reel seat can and might change the way you're perceiving the comfort of the length a little bit. Once you know where you're dialed in, I put little Sharpie marks here, got the focus, where the front and back of the reel seat is. And that will tell you exactly where you need to put that. For the most part, you're going to be putting wraps over those marks so that you'll never see them anyways. If you're putting marks with a Sharpie or anything like that, the China markers mostly just peel off Sharpies. They will clean off with alcohol, so no worries. I prefer using the Sharpie. So now that we have our marks here, front and back of about where the reel seat is going to go, you've probably noticed there's a lot of space here. What you need to do is called arbor this out, so the reel seat is both centered and is more solidly fitted to your rod blank. They make different arbors. You can sit there and remount like a grip. But the good old standard thing here is nothing but masking tape. Nothing to remount, and it guarantees you'll be perfectly centered. And no, I have never had masking tape fail. Most factory rods even still use this. So all you're going to do is spin it around, keep it centered, and all you're doing is building up that diameter to match the inside of your reel seat. This one is pretty close. Shouldn't need too much. I'll try there and see how that fits. You want it so there's not a lot of slop, but you don't want it super hard to push on. So that's pretty close, but I think I'm going to go with just a little bit more. If I can get it started here. Just a tiny bit more here. Two twists there. Should be pretty good. Yeah, that's nice. Not a lot of slop, but you're not jamming it either. That's about perfect. You want to leave a little bit of room for the epoxy in there, so you're really solidly on there. But you don't want to leave too much slop either, so you might not get centered. So now that you've got the front one done, go to your rear mark, do the same, tear that little fold out of there. Nice, flat, even pieces here. You're going just to the inside of where your front and rear of the real seat should be. Actually felt pretty good there. So if you have a big gap like this in the middle, do just one right down the center. It doesn't have to be a solid arbor. In fact, you don't want that. You do want some glue dams in between your arbors when you're doing the masking tape, because you'll put epoxy on the sides to help keep everything nice and sealed and rigid. But you want a good solid base for everything to match. So if you have a big gap like that, just run a little bit of your masking tape down the middle, make a third one. That might be a little too big there. Yeah, went a little too much there. So if you do that, just peel off a rotation or two until you get it to where you like it. So to me that's still too much. That's too tight. You see how it jumped everywhere when I tried to pull it? That's too tight. That right there is just about perfect. So you rotate it around, find your spine marks, where it needs to be the top, rotate it around there. That's the bottom of the reel seat, so that's the way the reels go. Then we're going to glue everything up, slide it together like that. Okay, now that you got your reel seat arbored out, the next step is to get your grips ready to mount. I like to do everything, the grips, reel seat, foregrip, whatever you got, one shot with the epoxy. So, depending on what kind of grip you've had, you're probably going to ream it. I am not using something you have to ream in this build. I am going to be using actual carbon fiber tubing. This is a slight red-handed carbon fiber tube that you can just buy just as tubing. Cut it to length you need. That's what I'm going to be using for grips, so I'm not going to be doing any reaming with like the files or a reamer with your EVA. But you need to mock up everything, and also again, get in your fishing position. Once everything's mocked up, check it, make sure you're comfortable with everything before you glue it. Once you use this pro paste or your two-part epoxy, it's done. You're gonna have to, if you ever want to change anything, you basically have to destroy everything. You ain't getting that crap unglued. So really mock everything up, sit, even pretend to cast in your fishing position. Make sure you are 100% happy with your reel seat position, rear grip length, all that stuff before you epoxy. So since we're not doing the reaming, what you might wonder is, how are we going to get this on here? Well, we're going to do the same thing we did with the reel seats. We're just going to build up some arbors on here. And exact same thing, literally, as the reel seat. Not a lot of slop, but not too firm on. So this video, I know, is going to be long as heck already. So I showed you how to build a tape mask arbor with the reel seat. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same with the grip. We'll cut back to that once that's ready to go. So we got our arbors all built up here. Another little tip I did here is this butt cap I'm using. It's designed to fit on a tenon of a grip. Since I'm using a carbon fiber grip, not the grip it was designed for, I just used a little masking tape to build an arbor, and we'll use the butt end of the rod as a tenon. So we got that. Okay, so got everything taped up here. One more device, and I forgot to put them on. I'll do that now. Is this stuff, this epoxy, as you do this, is going to get absolutely everywhere. And I mean everywhere. So have paper towels and your alcohol ready. Alcohol does clean it up fairly good. But I also like to use disposable gloves just for this step here. And you can see my reel seat, I'm going to get ready to slide down. I have tape on all the outside edges. Not going to really be able to do that with the carbon fiber grip because it actually has to fit inside the reel seat a bit. So we'll just have to be really careful about cleaning all that up. But we should be okay. So all you're going to start doing is spreading out the epoxy over your arbors. This is another reason I like to use this Pro Paste, because it actually has a long pot life, really long working time. I don't like to use too much of the epoxies that dry in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, because there can be a lot of adjustment and cleanup with this. So all you do is just smear it over everything. Like so. Now I like to spend a little extra attention. Make sure you get it around the front and rear of your arbors too, and that will just really seal everything and make everything real solid. Okay, I got the glue all over everything here, so we're ready to go. Again, gloves. I removed the pair of gloves I had on when I was putting that on and put on a new pair so I don't have to sit there and wash my hands. And we're ready to start sliding. I said I wasn't going to tape this. I did. I'll remove the tape once I'm over the last bit. It will help. Just can't leave it on the whole way. So I put spine marks from here to a little bit above the reel seat and even the tip, so I know which direction everything needs to go. So everything that this is up. This is the way the guides need to go, so I know which way to put my reel seat. And I think here I'm going to start with the reel seat. Just going to slide that sucker on there. And I'll see when I get to the tape coming up right there. Just go forward just a tiny bit. I think still in the shot pretty much here. Looks like it. Time for the actual grip here. You'll see it smooges. The reel seat wasn't too bad because it's a pocket reel seat. So sometimes these big things need a little encouragement here. There we go. See, this is why I wear gloves. So I don't have to sit there and worry about washing everything off my fingers. Because I just got epoxy everywhere. Okay. Approaching the reel seat. Oh God, I have glue all over that. It's just, that's what I do to avoid getting glue fingerprints all over everything. I'll take that off. Clean that up at an angle. It's not too bad because, like I said, this arrow seat's kind of a pocket. It'll slide in, so a little bit at the end there is not going to show anything. And that is in. Okay. The butt. Forgot to glue up the butt. Just need a little glue on the edge of that rubber. Sorry, I just forgot that, guys. A little bit of glue for the sleeve. That's going to smooch. It's going to be, oh, that didn't come out too bad. Also smooch to the inside. So I do need to come up just a tiny bit so it'll fit in there. All right, inside that tenon. And that, there it goes. Now really smooch. Just pull it together. There we go. So now there's nothing left but wiping everything down. Take off my tapes. That came out real quick. Good there. Mostly all went into the pocket. So I don't have a lot of cleanup there. Because I went in the direction I did, it didn't get on the tip real bad. Get that back centered. That's pretty much it there. And then it's just as simple as getting your paper towels, a little alcohol on there, and wiping everything up. Get rid of all that glue that's splooged out everywhere. This guy's being a pain in the butt. It's over there somewhere. Splooge there, not there. Just actually worked out a lot cleaner than I thought it would. It gets bad sometimes. Well, you get the picture. So that's pretty much it. I would just recommend keeping it like that. Got my spine mark here, so maybe twist it a little bit, like about there. One thing you can do, of course I don't have it laying around, but mount a flywheel, even if it's a normal build, because the flywheels are so tall and narrow, they really help you aim down to where how your spine's supposed to be. So same with when you put on guides, they make great guide spacing things, or not spacing, alignment, so you can see your alignment. It's kind of like looking down the side of a gun with those flywheels. So other than that now, say we're looking pretty good. Just kind of doesn't want to go right there. Got some epoxy on the very butt end somehow, probably a fingerprint. And yeah, that's it. So this Pro Paste takes a while to dry. Like I said, it makes it easy to build things. You're not in a rush to try to get things cleaned up and aligned and everything. But another thing is that it takes a while to dry. So with the Pro Paste, I usually like to let mine sit overnight. And that's how I do mine. So after this guy sits for a little bit, till tomorrow morning, I will come back and we will continue building this thing out. The next step is going to be start putting the guides on, tip top and guides. So we'll let this all dry and get together, and I'll see you then. Okay, everybody, so the handle, reel seat, all that stuff, the epoxy has sat at least overnight. Everything's good and set, not coming loose. So we can go ahead and keep moving here. The next step I like to do is the tip top. And you can do whatever order you like. I like to do the tip top next, just because once you get the tip top on there and you already have your reel seat, it makes it real easy to align your guides and keep them nice and straight as you go along. So as you do this, you get your tip top. You want to make sure your reel seat is pointed straight up. Make sure everything's straight. So I got that exactly straight. So all I need to do is get the tip top there exactly straight. And I'll show you here how I like to do my tip tops. It's kind of hard to glue everything at the same time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this fine of stuff on camera. But we have right there, say, you can see on here, I like to cut chunks right out of the side of my glue stick. That would be one of the chunks right there. And then I just run my blade straight up and down and cut it into thin, almost like splinters. And what we're going to do is we're going to pack those splinters right inside here. Get as many of them as you can, as much of it as you can in there. And then once you got it fully packed, they sell tip top holders. You can use one of those or just a pair of needle nose pliers. You're going to hold this and heat up the tip top with a lighter, because this tip top glue is like a heavier duty hot glue, not like you'd find on a hot glue gun. Heat that up till it melts, and then you're just going to slide it right on. All these tip tops will have a little, just a tiny hole, most all of them do in there. And you know you got a lot of glue and did a good job when it splurges out a little bit. Then once it splurges out before it fully sets, you just get in there with a little pick, get that little glue nub out of the top, and you should be all set. Alright, let's make it happen. Okay, so I got about as much glue as humanly possible up inside here. Let me see if I can get it to focus. See some even sticking out, so that's good. And I know that's not perfectly focused, but it's a little hard to get in here and work around the tripod and get it to focus on that small of a tip. So I'll do my best here. I think I might even come around the side here. So I'm going to hold them with my pliers. Apply a little heat, get that thing to melt, and then it's just as simple as sliding it on. Try not to block the camera, but this is pretty fine work. So I apologize. Doesn't take much. It's already starting to melt. Alright, it's bubbling out. Get some of that excess off there. Straight on. Oh, shit. That's alright. Pretty good. Right like that. Let me see if I can. We got our little glue. I'm not going to fold that. Coming out of the tip. So once this cools down enough and it settles so it's not going to move, just going to use our little dental pick here. Pick that little bit of glue out of the tip. And we will be good to go. Seems pretty solid. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I know I said I was going to do the guides next, but I forgot I am doing an abalone shell. Oop, knocked the camera around here. I'm doing an abalone shell inlay on this one. So, I like to soak mine in water, hot boiling water, for 10 minutes or so. But you still may have to use like a hairdryer or heat gun. And if I'm going to have that blowing air around here, I don't want to do it while I have wraps on here because that can move dust around, get on your thread. So I'm going to do this first. So what I like to do here is, you can see the big mark here. That is where my hood here, my locking hood, is going to sit roughly when the reel is mounted. I had the reel mounted when I marked that out. So right about here to right about here, you can see those marks. That's where I'm going to want my abalone. I like to leave a little bit of room here just so you can do your trim bands, transition from thread to abalone. So leave some room here so you can do your trim bands. And yeah, that's how it's marked out. So there's already some great videos on here on how to do the abalone. There's tons actually, but I'll go over it real quick. And what you're going to do is wrap masking tape on your points. Make a thin slice so you can peel the roll of masking tape off, and that will give you your diameters. So then you just tape it on the back of that, cut this to shape, and then people use heat guns straight. You can use boiling water. I like the boiling water. I'm going to boil water, set this in it, let it soak in there for probably around 10 minutes or so. And then we'll be ready to mount this abalone. And the reason why you got to get it real hot is if you try wrapping this around the blank, just standing here like this, it's going to crack. This is real abalone shell. This isn't a vinyl wrap, not sticker. I was practicing with some cheap eBay carbon fiber vinyl wrap. This is not vinyl wrap. These are real abalone shells. So if you don't get them good and hot before you start, flexing it around your blank, it will crack. Now, even good and hot on smaller blanks like this, It might crack a little bit. If it just cracks a little tiny bit, it's not that big of a deal. It will hide, the epoxy once it goes over will hide it, but you don't want it to crack in a major way. So you gotta get it real hot when you gotta do this. So I think that explains it pretty well. I'll check in at certain stops here, but you guys get the idea here. And let's go. Let's get this mounted. Okay, so slight change in plans. I'm not using the heat gun method. Seems like the new method to go with is boiling. So what I did is I boiled it until the back looks pretty much completely saturated. First, something like this. And I did a test and it seemed to work pretty good. So let's see how we do here. It is kind of a bastard to get off the backing once it's all soaked though. Adhesives doing a lot of weird things. Okay. So you want to start it. You want your seam on the bottom of the rod. For spin rod, that's going to be where the guides go. Same with the fly rod. For casting, that would be opposite. The guides, and I'm just going to slowly work it here. If you don't know, this abalone cracks extremely easily. That's why it is such a challenge to work with. Sorry if my arm was in the way. There was a crack that was already in it. Thanks, mud hole. Hopefully it's small enough once the epoxy goes on you won't notice it. Okay, that looked pretty good. I got 0 cracks except for the fucking mud hole screwed me. Excuse my language. But it's not big. And that should size up. Okay, so what we're going to do to really seal everything in and lock it, wrap it with size D thread under a lot of tension. I kind of want to hurry here, so I'm not going to really do that on camera, but as simple as just wrap everything up. So that's our next step. Alright everybody, so I got that fully wrapped. I did take a little peek there and it looks pretty good. Of course my camera will not focus because it hates me. But I'm going to leave it wrapped for right now because, like I said, the stuff is actually really fragile until you get your epoxy on it. So since I'm still working on the rod here, it's almost 9 p.m. I'm not going to get epoxy on it tonight. I'm going to leave it wrapped up for now just so nothing hits it or bangs into it or anything and cracks it. I'm going to go ahead and measure out the guides now. And here's a good little tip for you guys that don't have measurements on your actual bench or don't have a long bench. I just use a couple standard hair ties from the Dollar Tree. You can pick up whole freaking things like this. 18 count from the Dollar Tree. It's the same exact size you need for your stands too. I have a cat who's obsessed with hair ties, so they constantly go missing, and he will actually pull them right off these freaking stands. So I'm constantly buying these and replacing them. But yeah, you can use a couple little hair ties there. Hold your tape measure in place so you can go right down. Now about measuring guides. I don't know if I have to really film this whole thing because I assume you probably know how to use and read a tape measure. Pretty much all the guides, sets you buy will have some sort of spacing chart. Mudhole has spacing charts online. Tons of websites have spacing charts online. It's easy to figure out. When it's giving you your measurements, you start at the tip, and not just the tip, the ring. Another reason I like to get this mounted first. So the measurements are from the ring and the tip, and then when it gives you your spacing, say 4 inches, that's arbitrary, that's not necessarily what we're doing here. That measurement is to the ring of that guide, not the foot. So all listed measurements are from ring to ring, all the way down. So to start out with, it's as simple as just marking out your measurements for your particular guide. And then just remember too, those measurements are a general idea. So once you get everything on there, I like to use tape. I tape all the guides on there. String the rod up with a little line, put a little flex into it, test it out, make sure nothing looks funky, make sure the bend of the rod looks okay. That's called your little deflection test there. And you can adjust them a little bit as you need to. If not, go ahead and start wrapping them up. Alright, so we got everything marked. I did a preliminary test. Everything looked good. Putting a deflection test in it. So you can see all I do is I tear up various widths. I just cut or even just tear certain widths of masking tape to fit on the feet. And you can even get them thin enough down to the micros. Some of these micros are real small, but I have no problem with tape. I've never found a need to buy the little bands but you can use whatever you want to use. A note about these with the feet, especially with size A thread, is you may find trouble getting up onto the ramp here smoothly without any gaps in your thread. So what you need to do is, I use this. It's like kind of like a cheap journal. It's just a little $10 jobber from Harbor Freight. But you need to grind down the feet smoother here. Put more of a ramp, more of an angle in there. Get them real pointy at the end and you'll have no trouble getting your thread up onto the feet without gaps or anything like that. If you're using size D thread with smaller feet, you might not have to do that on some of the guides, but I always use size A thread on smaller rods so it's not quite as bulky. And especially with this rod, because I'm going to be doing 2 wraps over each guide. We'll get into that in the middle in a minute because I'm going to show you how to create just beautiful kind of candy apple metallic colors. All right, so let's get the rest of these taped on, and we'll actually get down to the nuts and bolts of wrapping this thing. All right, guys, so I'm going to try to show you the best I can here how I start my guide wraps. Now, I don't know why it's focusing on my finger, but not me, but whatever, you can see. Everybody's got kind of a different technique for starting their wraps. What I like to do, it's a real simple thing here. Just go to about where you want it started. Make one lap around. And just hold it there, and then you take your thread that's actually hooked up to the spool, not your tag end. Just lift it over like that. Hold that tag end. Make sure it kind of angles out so it gets wrapped over. And spin it. It's always nice when the camera jumps around like that. Sorry. And I like to get maybe 3 to 5 before I release tension. So that would be 3 there, and it'll hold. 4, 5. Now, a couple other tricks I can show you is we're talking about grinding feet to make it easier to transition. But you can also, one thing I've learned, is trim your tag end so that it goes up on the guide foot. Now, I'm not going to do that with this one because this is metallic thread and it may show through. So keep that in mind with metallic thread. It will always show ridges and stuff. These wraps are not actually going to be gold wraps. I'm going to do a neat little trick, NCP, that I will show you. This has got the wrong tension on it because I got the handle supported with the tie. Let me get that switched over. And I can show you a few more tricks too with getting it up on the guide foot. So these small metallic threads and the big first stripper guide, it can be a pain in the ass. So you just start winding. Try to keep all those gaps out of there. Okay, I'm approaching. Now if you have trouble getting it up on there, sorry, I'm trying to keep it centered. I'm working with a cell phone and it is actually braced against my fly tying vise. So this one might work, but what you can do, nope, see it skipped a thread. What I like to do sometimes is manually bring it out. And that one fell down by itself, but it doesn't. You don't have to worry about those gaps just yet. Keep it out. Do 2 or 3 wraps with it out like that. Then you can just use your finger to burnish it down. And it holds right on the tip of that foot like it just did there. That makes it a wee bit easier to get it up on that foot, especially with these metallics. Just got to spend a little bit extra time packing everything in. That's all right. There you go, it's going. So we got a little bit of a gap there. Let me see if I can just take this off and get it to focus on it. See, all you need to do is take your thumb keep packing it in. Make sure you get no gaps. It's as simple as that. If you get gaps as you go. I don't use the burnishing tools or anything like that. This thumbnail works as good as anything else. And if I actually need to actually burnish, I prefer a marker over any of the burnishing tools I've tried. And that's all you got to do to wrap it up. So I guess we should probably talk about one more thing before we move to epoxy, and that is pull-throughs and finishing off your tie. So what I do is I just take a loop thread. I just use the regular tying thread for my pull-through. I probably prefer a size D. It's just a little thin thread. Form a little open-ended loop. Tuck that in your wrap. I like to get at least 5 turns through my pull-through just to really secure that tag end. So as you can see, I stopped about where I'd have 5 turns left. We'll see how many turns. It's probably going to end up being more than that, but it don't matter. So try to keep it even. This one's fighting me. There it goes. Got to keep those out of the wrap. And it will want to kind of skip and gap on you there. So again, keep everything packed. I didn't even count, but we'll see. So that's about to the end of the guide foot there. So what you do is put pressure. Then it's going to be off camera here, but I'm going to go to my spool and my hand wrapper here and unwind it a little bit just to release the tension. Pair of scissors, cut your thread. And take your tag in. Put it right through that loop you formed. Pull it down tight. Start pulling on your pull through. Tight. Now some people like to trim off here to not leave a tag end. Leaving a little spiky tag end through it is not a big deal at all, and I will show you that. I might even do it on purpose here just to show you. But there you go. So what I normally do here is take a razor blade and get it off real close. But I'm going to leave a little spiky end here so I can show you guys what to do when it happens. So I'm just going to use scissors and leave that little spiky end there. Some people, I've seen people even say burn it off and do this and do that, and man, you're opening up a can of worms for way more trouble. These things are super easy to deal with after your first coat of epoxy. So if that happens, don't fret. Oh, we might have an opportunity here to show you something else. I think I see a little bit of a gap here. I'll show you what I was talking about with burnishing. There's a little bit of a gap right there. So if you get that, you can take your marker, burnishing tool, whatever you want to use. Just rub it a little bit. Boom, no gap. A little bit of a gap there, that can just be pushed in. And there you go. That is a completed guide wrap, ready for epoxy. All right, everybody, epoxy time. can see I got everything wrapped up, trimmed up here. Well, still don't like how this phone sometimes focuses perfectly and other times will not at all. It's wrapped up, got little black trim bands there. It just helps hide the transition from red to gold. Okay, so the epoxy. Unlike the glue type epoxy with the grips, this stuff has to be measured with syringes. Has to be absolutely perfect. 50 to 50. And I'm using Pro Coat. And a couple things about Pro Coat is, one thing, it takes a lot longer to dry than some others. That's okay. But the thing I really like about Pro Coat is how easy the bubbles release. See, I got a few in there. That's common after mixing. I'm going to set this down real quick. Maybe I can do it and hold it. I'm going to stir the bejesus out of this just to put bubbles into it on purpose to show you guys. So let me set the phone down real quick. Okay, tons of bubbles now. You do not want bubbles on the rod when you put it in there, because if they dry on there, you'll have a bubble. So I always pour my epoxy out. I know they sell trays, but I just like to use a folded up piece of tin foil. Well, it's technically aluminum foil, but you know what I mean. So you got all those bubbles you can clearly see. Pro Coat releases bubbles so easy. You do not need alcohol lamps, any of that crap. Just good hot breath. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get my breath in the shot, but no, I got to get closer. Okay, so you can clearly see all the bubbles in there. Some of them are already releasing. You can see by itself with that distance breath. Let me get up close and show you. Boom. All the big bubbles out in one just hot breath. And you pour it out. You gotta, like I said, it takes longer to cure, so you got a ways to work with this, so don't worry. So after I pour it out and I blow in it, I like to let it sit maybe 5 minutes or so for all the rest of the micro bubbles to release, and then you'll be ready to put it on the rod. Alright, so we let it sit, all the bubbles are out, time to actually start putting this on. All I do, I just get a little bit on the brush. Like I said, faster is better for applying, slower is better for drying. So I got this pretty much cranked all the way up. You just want to just touch it. Keep your edges nice and smooth. Let it drag out. You can see it's still dry even in one place. I barely put any on it. As you can see right now too, it looks like kind of like a normal red. It's going to start getting dark and transparent as this finish soaks through. And it doesn't look as good indoors under lighting like this, but once you get this out in the natural sunlight, it is beautiful. And like I said, keep your coats thin. There's no reason to try to finish a rod in one sweep. I always do multiple white coats. My first coat just barely wets the thread. It should be noted with this candy apple, I did do a layer of epoxy in between. So I did a thin layer on top of the gold, and then I wrapped with the red. Get my edge out just a little bit more here. And that's it, guys. Just rinse and repeat everywhere you got thread. Alright everybody, we got our first layer of epoxy down. Everything's looking pretty good right now. I'm just going to show you what to do about your tag ends if you miss some. And there's a big one right there, and how easy it is to fix. I see a lot of beginners leaving those around and people doing all these weird things to avoid it from happening, but it's no big deal to avoid it from happening. Epoxy, I've always kind of prided myself on even, nice, level coats of epoxy. So what I always do is multiple thin coats. Do not try to epoxy a rod in one coat. And it also gives you time between coats to fix stuff like this. So if you got your little tag in, all you come in and do, and this is after epoxy, is just bring a nice razor blade and run it right through. I need to do it a couple times till you have no hump. It feels good enough right there. Still a little bit of hump, but that will be gone. You will not be able to tell that was there when you do your next coat of epoxy. It will hide that little imperfection from cutting it. And it's as easy as that. So no reason to leave those around or worry about it at all. It's super easy to fix. That's all you have to do. Okay, so next I'm going to lay down the red, and then once I do that, I will actually show you how I do the epoxy. When I do these candy apples, I lay down a thin layer between the two layers of thread. Gives it a little bit more depth. So let me get that red on, and then we'll cut back to putting the epoxy on. Alright, so we got a couple of layers of the epoxy over the red going now, and it is looking good. Stuff is glowing. So you may have one last step that you need to do between some layers of epoxy, and that is stickers. If you want to attach any type of labels, custom stickers, you know, the blanks will come with their own labels for weight and brand and all that. What I like to do is I cut it fairly close to the letters, and then I make these little tabs with Scotch tape. It's just one front and back. So you'll pull these apart, and that'll get your backing off. And then you just hold it by the tape and attach it to your rod that way. The reason being why you do it like this is you cannot touch the backing once it's off. If you do, it's going to leave a fingerprint. It's going to get sealed under the sticker, and it will be there forever. Very noticeable. So it's a little bit different than putting things, you know, where you're not normal stickers where you can't see through it, and you're not putting epoxy over them, like on your car or something. A lot of people have trouble with these lifting once you start to put epoxy over them. And one thing I have found that works really well to prevent that from happening, something like hard as nails or any clear nail polish. You're just going to go around about 2 coats, seal the outside. Now, it will look a little mottled and stuff once you get this on, but once you put your epoxy on, you'll never know. It all smooths out and looks perfect. So I've seen some people say, you know, wrap with thread, use CP. I've tried all that. I've still had them lift. This is the only thing that has been 100% for me to keep them from lifting. And that is my little tips and tricks with stickers there. So I assume you know how to actually put it on the rod. It's just a sticker, you stick it. And I've been having trouble working around this camera, so I'm not going to do it on camera because I got to make sure I really get this centered and straight. So we'll cut back once it's all on there. Alright, y'all. Got a few coats over those stickers. And we are just about done here. Check it out of the light. As you can see, you can't see any of those rough edges from the nail polish. We got some sun shining through, so you can kind of get the candy apple effect. God, my phone is being terrible today. But when you get it out in the sun, man, it just glows. And it is extremely light. It's one thing I really like about this build. Came out good. Didn't do a lot of fancy thread work. Kept it simple, kept it light. All that carbon fiber really helps. Yeah, nothing left to do but go catch something with it.